So this week at Building Peace During the Pandemic, we're really happy to host Philippe Poinsot, who's the UN Resident Coordinator in Côte d'Ivoire. Welcome, Philippe, to another edition of Building Peace During the Pandemic. Philippe, we wanted to understand a bit better how the pandemic has impacted peace-building efforts, especially that the Peacebuilding Fund, the Peacebuilding Support Office has been engaged now for a long time in Côte d'Ivoire, mainly as a result of the transition from peacekeeping to peacebuilding. Côte d'Ivoire has came out of I would say, a very deeply entrenched root causes of tension and conflict. The last time there was a peacekeeping mission deployed to Côte d'Ivoire was a result of the electoral crisis. Today, we're facing certainly certain tensions, certain electoral tensions, certain challenges of governance, but there's also a much broader agenda of peace building in Côte d'Ivoire. How has the pandemic affected those efforts and the prospects for peace building in Côte d'Ivoire?
The COVID crisis really came at the bad time, at the wrong time. Less than 6 months before elections, at a time where tensions and stakes are high between communities, level of trust towards government being not necessarily very high in some part of the country. And when you have a lockdown in a country where you have very little safety net and where a lot of people depend on the money they earn, very often informally at the end of the day, you can imagine that any attempt to have a formal lockdown would have a tremendous impact with literally millions of families who would end up being with no revenue. When you have communities who are already, borderline in terms of cohesion, when you have communities who sometimes are fighting against each other for natural resources or for resources in general, you're just exacerbating, the situation. So for us, it was really a real concern.
How have you adapted your programs, including peace building fund programs, to the new reality and to try to mitigate some of the risks that you've just highlighted?
What we had to do at this particular time was to quickly reorient, redeploy some of those resources in order to face the immediate needs. And those needs were, essentially three prongs. First, we had to advise the government on what type of national response. So it was about the national response on health, but it was also about the socio-economic response and also the humanitarian response. The second effort, which also was critical for us, was to do some level of coordination between government and other donors who wanted to help, but also coordination among the local actors, especially on the humanitarian side. We had basically to invent, design, and implement a short-term safety net in order to provide cash and direct assistance to a maximum number of people who suddenly had lost their income and had to have the two ends meet. And then on the more, the third aspect of our support was to look indeed at this continuum in peace building and in prevention. How do we make sure that those communities who were affected, were already possibly in a dire need, could be assisted in order to not fall into a crisis mode. So we invested more resources into social cohesion. We targeted the youth in particular. We tried to mobilize them so they could be helpful in their communities and get a role also at their level in fighting the crisis and preventing the spread of the virus.
Specifically on the electoral tensions, there's been, I believe, according to news reports, a certain degree of stigmatization and using COVID as the pandemic as a tool to stigmatize others as part of the electoral contest at the moment. What's the UN doing about this?
our work today, our focus is really on making sure that we are combating hate speech and that communities, youth, activists are equipped with the tools they need, especially on social networks, to make sure that we all contribute to a peaceful environment for the election at the end of the month.
Well, thank you so much, Philippe. It's great to listen to you, great to speak with you today, and many congratulations to you and the team on excellent work in very difficult contexts.